The Sandy Trail continues with part 2 review for episode 6 of season 3 of Sanditon. We left off with the scene when Charlotte tried to inform Mr. Heybourne that she is single again and that she wanted to get back together with him, but he wasn't around. He was out riding on his horse. Now this scene is Mr. Price and Lady Denham. Mr. Price was very upset. He was going nuts. He was complaining about how Tom stepped out of the partnership in building the new hotel in Sanditon. Mr. Price had this determination. He had this business ambitious. He was ready to get this hotel going, and he didn't seem to have that sense of caring for other people. Tom cared for the old town. Mr. Price, he hasn't been living in Sanditon, so he really doesn't care about the true heart of Sanditon, the real people of Sanditon, the old town. Tom has the heart for his people in Sanditon, so that's why Mr. Price doesn't understand where Tom was coming from when Tom informed him, hey, I'm stepping out. And that made Mr. Price really, really upset. But then Lady Denham, I think for the first time that I remember, she is on the same side as Tom, and she tried to encourage, convince in a nice way to Mr. Price, hey, why would you blame a guy that wants to support his wife and want the best for his wife and his family? And Mr. Price, calmed down, and I was oh, okay, so she had that power over him, and he let it go. So it's a nice conclusion. Tom can continue with his own life, and Mr. Price can continue with his engagement season with Lady Denham. Then the topic got changed, right? They talk about Lady Denham becoming the new Mr. Price tomorrow, the next day. And he was so excited, and he told her to bring any servants or anything she wanted to bring over to the new house, to his house. Yeah, Lady Denham did not seem too happy by the end of the scene. You can see that she still has some conflict, some doubts, second thoughts. I don't think she is ready for this at all. The next scene is Georgiana ranting about her mom, how Miss Harmon just left suddenly without a note. Mary, she is a mother. She tried to encourage Georgiana from a motherly perspective, give Agnes another chance, allow her to explain herself why she left suddenly without a note. Maybe she would come back. Georgiana, she trusted a lot of people in her past, and she had a lot of betrayals and disappointments. So in season 3, she is guarding her heart very tightly. She doesn't want to get hurt, right? She doesn't want to get disappointed by people that she trusted in. She's I'm cutting this woman out. She is not my mom. I don't need this drama. I don't need this negative energy before my wedding. And Georgiana still thinks that this marriage will solve all of her problems, right? Not really. And it just reminds me just now with that saying, don't get into a relationship or don't marry someone because you think that will solve all of your issue. It will not. In Charlotte, you can see that she still is concerned for her friend Georgiana, especially marrying Harry, knowing that Otis still loves Georgiana, and Charlotte can see that Georgiana still loves Otis even though she doesn't want to admit it. So there's a lot of drama going on in Georgiana's life at the moment.
Samuel said you were to leave. He said you've been called back to London.
the quick glimpse of the wedding preparation for the wedding of Lady Denham and Mr. Price, and then we skip fast forward to Charlotte and Lady Susan conversation, and Charlotte was like straight up confronted Lady Susan like, hey, your man Samuel told me that you're leaving and you're going back to London. Of course, Charlotte doesn't want to see Lady Susan leave Sanditon.
A certain friend has decided he requires my company after all. One doesn't say no to this particular friend.
There was gossip in the beginning of season 3 about the relationship between Lady Susan and the King. So I'm guessing Charlotte knew what Lady Susan was talking about when she mentioned a certain friend and a certain friend that you don't say no to. So it's very obvious that that letter that Lady Susan received earlier in this episode was from the King, and the King wants her back. And to me, my personal opinion is I wouldn't even waste my time going back to an ex-boyfriend, knowing the way that he, treated Lady Susan like that, just because she is getting old. The King wanted someone younger. Like I wouldn't even give him any attention.
But before I go, I shall at least finally see you get the happiness you deserve.
I intend to speak to Mr. Colburn at Lady Denham's wedding.
But that was she deciding, and she switched the topic in this conversation back to Charlotte love life. But we all know that Lady Susan has always been a big fan of Charlotte and cheering her on to find true love and happiness with that special man. I love this little segment of this scene because season 3, I feel like Mr. Heybourne has been the one that said the words and showed the action, show how he feels about Charlotte. And this moment right here is so sweet because the smiles on her face, she's getting butterflies, she a little bit anxious about talking to Mr. Heybourne, hoping for the best, that his feelings for her hasn't changed. She's just excited to talk to him, you know what I mean? We haven't seen her chase after him in season 3, and now she's single, she's free, she's having that basketball moment, she chasing after him, I'm gonna make it happen, I'm gonna see him at the wedding, I'm gonna talk to him, and I'm gonna tell him. And I think it's just a really exciting thing to see, and hopefully that happens. But just in this scene, it's just really nice to see Charlotte get really excited for a man that she meant to be with.
I only hope his feelings towards me haven't altered.
Oh, it's safe to say there is no chance of that.
Lady Susan, she saw it all, and she only saw them in season 3. She wasn't there in season 2, but she knew automatically that there were sparks between Charlotte and Alexander, and that was a very encouraging statement from Lady Susan that definitely gave some motivation and confidence to Charlotte, that confidence to pursue her plan in finding him at the wedding and telling him about her feelings.
I know you and Harry are not a love match, but you will treat him with kindness.
Of course.
This scene is the one that I wanted to talk about and match it with the scene from earlier this episode. That conversation of the Monroe family, and Lydia told her mom and her brother that she is off to a morning horse ride. So we're gonna link that moment to this scene. Just not yet, but first, Lydia, she mentioned about Georgiana and Harry's relationship, I think it was so obvious that Lydia knew that this is a business relationship, that Georgiana and Harry are not in love with each other, and that her brother would rather be with Arthur instead. But she's still gonna respect Georgiana as her sister-in-law, and she understood why Georgiana and Harry are doing this. But she's supporting her brother, right? She wants the best for her brother. She knows that Georgiana would have been like a nice wife for Harry, but they're just not in love.
And you would also be wise to keep your distance from our mother, or you will soon find your life is not your own.
As you do.
Oh, I have ways to preserve my autonomy.
Lydia also advised Georgiana to stay away from Georgiana's future mother-in-law, Lady Monrose, and that is totally understandable. Since the beginning of season 3, we knew as the audience, right, like how bad Lady Monrose really is. She technically like the evil person of this season. Like sometimes shows have like the primary bad guy, you know, of the season. She seemed like to be like a frenemy, but a little bit more of an enemy than a friend, if that makes sense. I don't know. But she just loved to meddle in her children's lives, especially her children's romantic relationship, which is not good. So that was a nice reminder from Lydia to Georgiana, like, hey, I know your relationship with Harry is fake, but you still gotta watch out for Lady Monrose. Lady Monrose doesn't know exactly that this marriage between Harry and Georgiana is fake. They're doing it just to benefit one another. But yeah, Lydia, she knows her mom really well, and that's like one of the struggle of Lydia this season, just having that independence from her mom.
May I share a secret, Georgiana? I have recently formed an engagement.
If you haven't watched this episode, I'm sorry, I'm gonna spoil it just a little bit. But back in that scene earlier in this episode, the Monrose conversation, Lydia got up from her seat and told her family, I'm going off to a morning horse ride. And her mom thought that it would be with Alexander. And now Lydia told the news to Georgiana in this scene. Like, the next question is, okay, so could it be with Alexander, and Alexander proposed to her like very quickly? But in reality, like, would Alexander propose to her like that quick, you know? Or could it be the possibility that her ex-boyfriend was in town in secret, and they've been hanging out in secret lately, and he decided to propose to Lydia, whoever that guy is. So it could be either or, right? But then Georgiana, the look on her face, she's like, oh no, my dear friend Charlie gonna get so heartbroken. And I assume Georgiana already knew that Charlotte planned to tell Mr. Heybourne her feelings. So as a friend, you would like be like, give your friend a heads up, like, hey, maybe you should you know, not tell him until you find out if he is engaged or not. But then, you know, that would like create some drama. So yeah, it doesn't look good like right now. But if you already watched this episode, you already know what happened. But as a first-time watcher, like, these are the questions that, for me, if I watched it for the first time, like, could it be Alexander or a different guy that Lydia is engaged to?
Georgiana. What is it?
Lady Lydia is engaged.
Georgiana, a good friend that she is, she informed Charlotte before the wedding so Charlotte can prepare herself just in case if she runs into Alexander at the wedding. I mean, she will run into him. She cannot really run away from him at the wedding, but it's a nice heads up, like, hey, you know, Alexander might be engaged to Lydia.
She swore me to secrecy. Then I've missed my chance. I'm so sorry.
It's funny though, when Georgiana announced the engagement of Lydia, like, Charlotte assumed automatically that Alexander was the one that proposed to her. And we like, wait, hold up, like, we don't know until, like, we see it in front of her, you know what I mean? Like, if I was Charlotte, like, I wouldn't, like, accept it 100% until I go to the wedding and see them, like, holding hands at the wedding ceremony. It could be anyone. But then again, Lydia did say that it's a secret engagement news that she told to Georgiana. And Georgiana did warn Charlotte, like, hey, this is a secret, I should not be telling you, but, you know, friendship hold, like, I told you everything. So yeah, so Charlotte needs to keep it to herself. But then again, if I was Charlotte, I would totally, like, test what Georgiana said. Like, I wouldn't, like, accept what Georgiana said, like, 100%. Like, not to be mean, but, like, I wouldn't accept it as reality until, like, Charlotte herself see Alexander holding hand with Lydia in public. Of course, Charlotte is heartbroken to hear this. It's funny though, like, Alexander got heartbroken when he found out that Charlotte is engaged to Ralph, and now it's the other way around. Charlotte is heartbroken to find out that Alexander is engaged to Lydia, if that's the case.
Oh, Mr. Colburn, the very man. Yeah, Miss Markham. Your Graces, Lady Lydia.
Awkward. A good awkwardness, though. It's good awkward. But yeah, Charlotte keeping her distance. First note, though, Lydia and Alexander, like, okay, it's a secret engagement. But wouldn't Lydia and Alexander be, like, standing next to each other at least, you know? Like, close, like, as a couple. But for now, Charlotte is just being mindful and wise and keeping her distance from Alexander after hearing that news from Georgiana.
I'm so pleased to see you recovering, Mrs. Parker.
Thank you. I'm almost restored to my former self.
Yeah, I was hoping we might have a chance to discuss our plans for the old town, Mr. Colburn.
If you mean your plans, Mrs. Parker, I should be glad.
Do you see that quick glance that Alexander gave to Charlotte after he bowed down in greeting? Like, he looked up first to Charlotte, and then he looked to Tom and Mary. And they talk about the old town. So Tom wants to pursue a partnership with Alexander instead of Mr. Price. So Tom is heading in the right direction there. Once again, this is a good awkwardness. Seeing Charlotte standing in front of Alexander and just having this group conversation before the wedding ceremony.
I'm happy to say he does, sir.
I was just saying how charming this little chapel is. It would hardly do for Harry and Miss Lamb, but it's the perfect size for an older bride.
Does anyone know if Lydia is older than Harry? Let me know if you know. By the sound of it, looks like Lydia is older than Harry after Lady Monroe's mentioned about getting married in a chapel. In this little chapel is best suited for older brides. And Lydia just, like, shaking her head. I'm like, this mama bear, Lady Monroe, needs to shut her mouth. It's getting a little bit annoying, in my opinion. I forgot to mention Harry and Arthur kept looking at each other, and I'm just like, oh boy, like, Georgiana should not get involved in the three-way relationship between Arthur and Harry. It's gonna get complicated because once Georgiana and Harry get married, and if they do have kids, Lady Monroe is expecting grandchildren, especially grandsons from Georgiana and Harry, so that's gonna make it even more complicated for that secret relationship between Arthur and Harry, because if those kids happen, then they grow up and they're wondering, like, where's my daddy Harry, like, he always away. And if they find out that their daddy is having a secret affair with Arthur, yeah, you don't want to get into those types of drama. But yeah, I can tell that Alexander looked again toward Charlotte. I think he wanted to say something to Charlotte, but Lady Monroe, in a way, interrupted Alexander's train of thought. And of course, you know, Lady Monroe trying to push the agenda of having Lydia and Alexander be engaged and get married really soon.
I wonder if you have such a chapel on your estate, Mr. Colburn.
I'm afraid not, Your Grace.
Perhaps you should build one.
I will certainly consider it, if the occasion demands it.
I think at first the writers tried to trick us. They were talking about building a little chapel on Herrick Park. It seemed that Lydia was like teasing him in a flirty way, like just a little bit. But I think it was just like a friendly push to Alexander, like, hey, you should get married too. You should find the love of your life. Like, you are an attractive man. You have everything that a woman desires. Like, Lady Monroe was, like, looking back and forth between her daughter and Alexander. She's like, ooh, like, this is happening. But at the end, though, Alexander said he will only build a little chapel if he is getting married. So that's like a little answer right there. He is not engaged to Lydia. And Charlotte, you know, picked up on it, like, okay, they are engaged. And then Georgiana did mention that Lydia is engaged in secrecy, but in all honesty, like, why would Lydia be secretive about her engagement to Alexander? Like, why are they, you know, in this group conversation in this scene? Like, I don't think they would be shy about it, unless the man that Lydia is engaged to is the man that is not in the group conversation, a man that her mom doesn't approve. So, Alexander is not engaged to Lydia.
Excuse me. Mr. Colburn.
Another little clue, the way that Alexander looked toward Charlotte as she walked away, he is still in love with her. I just remembered now, I'm like, how did I forget that? So this scene, Lady Denham, she getting ready for her wedding, but she didn't look too happy. I'm like, this wedding is not gonna happen. Like, she doesn't look excited to get married. But then it reminded me of the scene earlier in this review when Mr. Price was complaining about Tom and Lady Denham was listening to him. And they changed the topic and they were talking about, like, how wives are, like, properties, and Lady Denham, like, I'm not a property, like, I'm not a piece of asset that you can buy and sell. And Mr. Price, like, no, like, you're not. And then he made that sweet comment, like, if Lady Denham was a property, like, it would be too much for him to buy her because he think that she was $1 million. Like, she is, like, the most valuable thing in his life now. But that reminded me of, you know, of this moment, this connection of, like, how she doesn't want to give away her independence and her freedom. She feels like if she married Mr. Price, like she feels like she is a property, even though she is not. I think she has some concern like how she gonna get treated by her husband, Mr. Price. Like, will her lifestyle change? Like, will the dynamic of their relationship change? He seemed to be controlling on where to live. If she stayed in Sanditon, like if he moved to her house in Sanditon, I think she would be really, really happy right now to marry him. But since she living in Sanditon, and you can see behind her, like her house is like, it's dark, and they cover the furnitures and blankets and stuff, and it looks sad, and she looks sad. So it's like an early sign that this wedding might not happen.
You cannot let her leave.
I'm a lawyer, Miss Heywood. I know when a case is hopeless.
Really cute Charlotte had the look that Samuel had on his face as he was looking at Lady Susan, and she started to encourage him, and it showed that she support not only Lady Susan but Samuel, and she support these two to be together as a couple. So Charlie does know that the king wrote a letter to Lady Susan asking her to come back to London. It was pretty obvious the way that the letter arrived to Lady Susan, so fancy. The king has his own delivery man, his own messenger. In Charlotte, she is against the idea of seeing her friend Lady Susan be back with the king. She knows that Samuel is a better man, and she knows how happy Lady Susan is whenever she is with Samuel. Much happier than with the king or any other man. Charlotte knows that Samuel is the best bet for Lady Susan.
I don't care if he is the king. She deserves so much better. Someone who'll fight for her.
The king?
Lady Susan never told Samuel that it was the king that asked her to come back to London. But at the same time, Samuel probably thinking like, oh, now I know why she really wanted to go back to London and why she didn't want him to follow her back to London. He was like, oh, we can make it work in London too. And Lady Susan cut him off. So now Samuel understands why Lady Susan broke up with him. But at the same time, you know, sometimes comparison comes in, right? Comes into your mind, and he might be also thinking like, oh, a lawyer versus the king, you know? Like, the king has everything. Like what woman wouldn't want to be with a king? And like, the king has everything, has all the money, the power, the wealth. So yeah, so a little bit of a discouragement for Samuel, you know, like, oh man, like she chose this other guy over me just because of his reputation.
Will you sit beside me?
Of course.
It's so nice to see Augusta back in public and just getting back into the groove of life. Edward is at the wedding, so Augusta will see him at the ceremony and probably at the reception afterward. So she wants Charlotte to sit next to her just for comfort and support, and she admires Charlotte like an older sister. Mr. Price is freaking out. He's wondering, like, okay, where is my bride? Like, why she's not coming, walking down the aisle yet? Alexander like immediately like went to Augusta, planned to sit next to her, not realizing that Charlotte already took his seat, and he's like, okay. He doesn't know yet that Charlotte is single, so the way that he sat down, like he wanted to respect Charlotte, thinking that she is engaged to Ralph still, you know, that boundary, that physical closeness, sitting next to each other. Charlotte, of course, she kind of like leaned a little bit closer to Augusta out of respect, thinking that Alexander is engaged to Lydia in secret. So these two have like the wrong idea about each other, the wrong perspective of each other relationship status. They both think that the other is engaged to, you know, a different person. Mr. Price already knew what was happening, the way that Edward was walking down the aisle instead of his bride, Lady Denham. Augusta, she didn't look too happy to see Edward. Charlotte looked over to Augusta, making sure that she is okay. Yeah, things are not going well.
Pleased to see that Mrs. Parker is recovering well.
Yes. So am I.
Mrs. Wheatley said there was something you wished to tell me.
Good awkwardness once again. Alexander tried to start a conversation, like something normal, something not too awkward, something that can be easily talked about. So the first thing he said is Mr. Parker. And then he continued the conversation with Charlotte, and Charlotte just trying to stay calm and just answer his question or talk back to him out of respect, and just to listen to what he had to say to her.
Something you could only say in person?
I simply came to say a last goodbye. That's all.
Mr. Weasley did pass the message to Alexander, so that's good. So Alexander already had that plan in his mind. Once he get to the chapel, like he gonna talk to Charlotte and ask her what she wanted to talk about. And Charlotte like, oh right, about that. She's like quickly gave a quick answer like, oh, just want to say goodbye, that's all. She doesn't want to get into the middle of Lydia and Alexander's relationship. She thought that Lydia is engaged to Alexander, and she, of course, she doesn't want to talk about that. So she's like, no, just, you know, a goodbye, that's all. And it's a little bit interesting, though, how the way he approached her, like, oh, Mr. Whitley told me that you had something to talk about. And, like, he looked at her, but when she, like, looked at him, he kind of, like, look away a little bit, and then like when she said, oh, I just want to say goodbye, like bam, like they look at each other at the same time, and he's like, okay, noted, so this is not gonna happen, like you are still marrying Ralph. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, like these two like have the wrong thinking about each other relationship status. Like they don't know that they are technically single and that they can be together.
This is your doing. Knowing their marriage would leave you homeless and penniless. You have sabotaged it.
On the contrary, I urged her to come.
I have no words for such a situation.
And then Edward officially announced that there was no wedding, and of course Mr. Price and Mr. Hankins thought that Edward played a role, but in all honesty, Lady Denham wasn't feeling it since the beginning of the engagement, in my opinion. I think she wasn't really up for it, like 100%.
Lords, ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid it's my duty to inform you that Lady Denham is unable to attend.
He not blame Edward on this one. But yeah, he announced that there's no wedding and everyone in shock.
I apologize. I hate to be the cause of such dismay, but it seems there will be no wedding after all.
I don't know if this makes sense, but I thought about it. I don't know if I should say it, but Edward, when he said, "I apologize, I hate to be the cause of this dismay," the camera, like, focused on him. Looks like he was, like, glancing over to Augusta, and when he said, "I apologize," like, we saw Augusta's reaction on her face, and she wasn't happy to see him at the wedding. Like, she doesn't want to run into him or talk to him. Like, she doesn't want to do anything with him. But I think in the back of her mind, she's like, oh, you apologize in front of the crowd at this wedding, but you never apologized to me for how he treated her and how he broke up with her.
I cannot understand it, brother. Lady Denham is long past the age where most ladies would have given up hope of finding marriage.
It's not a good picture, you know? I think it's a little bit embarrassing, especially for Mr. Price. The way that he walked out of the church and, you know, he didn't even say goodbye or anything to the pastor and the sister. Like, it was embarrassing for him. I felt bad a little bit for him.
Why would she deny herself this last chance of happiness?
Then the doctor said his goodbye to Miss Hankins and Mr. Hankins, and Miss Hankins acknowledged him.
Perhaps she realized that she and Mr. Price were ill-suited. Perhaps he had certain attitudes that rendered him unworthy.
But Mr. Hankins continued talking to his sister and talking about how, you know, Mr. Price is unworthy of Lady Denham, to have Lady Denham as his wife. And then the way he talked bad a little bit about Mr. Price, his sister was like, wait, are you talking bad about my relationship with the doctor as well? And that's when she started to question her brother back, like who gives you the power and control to determine her destiny, her happiness, like who she should be with for the rest of her life?
And who would be worthy, John? Were Jesus himself to pay me a compliment, you would find fault with him.
Beatrice.
Are you really so afraid of your own company?
She is ready for love. She is ready to fall in love. She's ready for a romantic relationship. She really wants to be with the doctor, but her brother is holding her back. And this is like the most emotional release that she showed to her brother. Like, she had been like holding it inside of her and putting up with him, but now she is like releasing it all out to him, and she got upset, she got emotional, she walked away. I assume priests cannot marry a person, so that's why she's like, oh, are you afraid to be single? Are you afraid to live by yourself for the rest of your life if his sister pursue a marriage with the doctor or with a different man that she wants to be with? That was like the most dramatic conversation ever of the Hankins family in the show history. I thought that was hot, the way he stopped his walk, he looked over, he's chasing after his woman. He's not giving up on her. I like it. I love that chase.
Why did you not tell me the truth? That he'd summoned you?
That is not the word I would use.
You tried to claim that this was just a moment. But you don't believe that any more than I do.
He is confronting her. Good for him. She did lie to him, and he deserved the truth. She is lying to herself. She knows better. She knows that Samuel is a better man, a better husband for her.
Please don't make this any more difficult than it needs to be.
He doesn't deserve you.
That struck her heart, and he's still not giving up on her, and it just shows how much love he had for her, and he wants her, and we know she wants him too, but she's just denying him and denying the truth.
But he could treat you with such disdain, like a possession, to be picked up or dropped on a whim.
And if he doing this to herself, she will eventually get hurt, and if the king mistreat her again and, you know, drop her on the side of the street again, they're gonna even hurt her even more.
No, I know I cannot offer you much, but I promise to love only you, to be faithful and constant, and to dedicate myself to your happiness.
Okay, this is his official pre-proposal to her. He wants her. He wants to spend the rest of his life with her by his side. He all about her. The king is all about himself. And it's so obvious, and she needs to pick Samuel over the king.
My happiness is beside the point.
No. Your happiness is all that matters. More than riches, or position, or whatever the terms of your arrangement may be.
It reminds me of, like, you know, like dating a celebrity. Some people might think dating a popular person or a celebrity or whatever, like, it's gonna solve everything, but it's a really true happiness, right? And Samuel is the most true happiness, like, form of happiness that Lady Susan can trust in a man. The happiness from the king is temporary. It's not long-term. It's not everlasting.
I'm sorry.
Going back to the king, that type of relationship is a relationship where she doesn't have to worry about settling down. She had this agreement to herself, like she's not gonna get married, like she doesn't want to go through that again. She had a bad experience in her first marriage, and that's like a scar in her mind. Like that's something in her past that she just doesn't want to talk about. Like she doesn't want to bring it up. Like she doesn't want to relive it again. So part of this is she is afraid. She has this minor trust issue, like, do I deserve this kind of love? Do I deserve Samuel? Do I deserve a better marriage with Samuel? So that's another aspect of why she doesn't want to give in. She doesn't want to give Samuel a chance to prove that he is worthy of her.
Well, Louisa, do you not think you owe me an explanation?
In the beginning of season 3, they were like talking back to each other, like, oh, you were the one that left me standing. No, you were the one that left me standing in the rain. And now she stood him up at the altar, and he is embarrassed. He is heartbroken. He's like, what the heck is going on? And Lady Denham is just sitting there by herself before he came into the room. Like, oh, you know, like, just being Lady Denham. And Mr. Price, like, you cannot let this day go by without talking about what happened and why she stood him up at the altar.
You left me stranded, alone, in front of the entire chapel. I have never known such humiliation.
I have, strangely enough.
Is that what this was? Revenge?
She hasn't been honest with him since he proposed to her. She should tell him the truth right now. She had doubts and second thoughts, and that's why she didn't marry him.
Very absurd. If I were to plot revenge on everyone who's wronged me, I should never sleep.
And what was it?
I found myself watching everything I've ever owned being packed away.
That's the honesty. She doesn't want to leave Sanditon. Sanditon is her home. This house is her home. This house represents who she is. It's everything to her. She is not ready to give that up.
And I realized I cannot just leave it all behind. The house, Sanditon, my life.
And he hasn't been really listening to her. Like, it's all about him and hearing him talk about things he wants to do as husband and wife and their living situation, the housing situation. But now, I'm hoping he listened to her and listened to what she had to say, because she had the equal opportunity and power to express her feelings and concerns and thoughts.
My title, my independence. It was too hard won to give up now.
And why agree to marry me at all?
Mr. Price, I don't blame him. Like, why do you agree to marry Mr. Price?
I got caught up in it all. But now I realize we have been trying to relive the past, when perhaps that is where we should have left it.
But Lady Denham, like, she did have feeling for him in the past. He did have feeling for her in the past. Their romance rekindled in season 3. You know, it was a moment, but then she had that realization, like, wait, did I make the right choice in saying yes to his proposal?
I would respectfully beg to differ. But I know better than to try and change your mind.
I was a bit shocked, though, that he didn't argue with her furthermore. He just left the room. But the look on her face, though, I think she still wants to be with him. Maybe she just doesn't want to rush into a marriage. Or maybe just stay as boyfriend and girlfriend until one of them die. I don't know. But yeah, it's a tricky decision that she had to make. Like, does she want to give up everything and be with him? Or is she willing to sacrifice, compromise, and move to Sanditon, for example, and let her be happy? It's a two-way street. I think he should move to Sanditon and move into her house. I think that would make it work even better for this couple. But for now, it seems that they are not a couple. They have broken up. The ball is in her court. If she wants him back, she needs to say it to him.
My father's written a letter of such kindness, although he is greatly disappointed. Whereas Alison will feel any relief that I'm not to marry Ralph.
I wish we get to see Charlotte's parents again, or Alison again, or some of Charlotte's family members, especially in this last episode. But we get to hear from Charlotte about her dad through that letter in the scene. Her father still supports Charlotte after she made the decision to not marry Ralph. It's so funny that Alison didn't support Ralph either. Alison and Georgiana, they were Team Alexander by the end of season 2 into season 3. But Charlotte, she feels relieved now, you know? She's like, okay, Ralph was done. Now my dad is okay. Now Charlotte can focus on herself. She can focus on just being single and continue her single life and hopefully find happiness again.
I think I shall stay with her and Declan while I plan what comes next.
Have you given the matter much thought?
I've always dreamed of opening a school for young women.
Charlotte wants to become a teacher. She has passion, she has dreams, and she's probably thinking, like, I had enough of heartbreak with men. Like, let me focus on myself, on my future, on what she wants personally.
So, in the first instance, I shall look for a position as a teacher.
You know, Charlotte, you're more than welcome to stay here as long as you like.
I was hoping you might help with my plans for the old town.
And Arthur, didn't want to see Charlotte leave Sanditon for good. And then Mary tried to convince Charlotte to stay and help with the planning of the old town. And Tom was very nice in offering a longer stay for Charlotte at the Parker house. She's an honorary member of the Parker family. She can stay there whenever she comes to Sanditon.
I'll do whatever I can before I leave. But it's time for me to start anew.
They want her to stay longer, and I thought it would be great if she did, because then she would have a second chance with Alexander, right? Alexander is in Sanditon, but with the circumstance, as of now, Alexander thinks Charlotte is still marrying Ralph, and Charlotte thinks Alexander is marrying Lydia. So that's not working out for now.
You shall require something rather more demure, of course, Lydia, when it comes to your turn.
I shall bear that in mind for when that day arrives.
Do you see that smirk on Lydia's face? Something to keep an eye on Lydia.
What do you think, Your Grace?
I think you look like a duchess.
Then Miss Agnes Harmon came back. I'm like, yes, here comes the drama. Lady Monroe did not look happy. Georgiana is super shocked. Lydia, I think she would be happy to see Miss Harmon back. Miss Harmon seemed to be a more understanding and loving mother compared to Lydia's own mother.
May I talk with my daughter? Alone, please.
We're gonna stop it here right at the 30-minute mark. Perfect. But yes, I love the power, the control in her tone when Miss Harmon asked to speak to her daughter Georgiana. She's very stern. She's like get out of this room. Let me talk to Georgiana by myself. We'll see what happens next in the next video. After this, 2 more parts left to wrap up this episode 6 of season 3 of Sanditon, and then the Sandy Trail is over for good. I hope you enjoyed this one as well. Any thoughts, comments about the scene, drop them below in the comment section. Give a like if you like, subscribe if you haven't, it's never too late. See you very soon in the next 2 videos to wrap this episode up. See ya, bye.